Hello and welcome to this new Starfield video. Today we're gonna take a look at all the latest and greatest information around Starfield, and actually there isn't as much news as in the last few days, but I've got some really nice articles I want to talk about, and I didn't expect that I'd ever say it, but one is from the GQ magazine in UK, and they have a really nice behind the scenes article of the production of Starfield with some really great interviews and also some new information around Starfield. We're gonna take a look at some excerpts of that article, and then we're also gonna take a look at what AMD has to say about implementing DLSS into Starfield, a big topic in the community for sure. And in the end of the video, we're gonna take a look at your top comments on my last video, so stick around until the end for that. If you enjoyed this video, please show it some love by hitting that like button, and if you want to stay up to date on all things Starfield, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the bell notification so you won't miss any future videos. But now let's jump right into this video. Like I said, there is a GQ article on the production of Starfield, so let's take a look at some snippets of the article, like this one right here. The last time Xbox had a game capable of shifting the cultural needle in the same way as The Last of Us Part 2 or God of War Ragnarok was 2007's Halo 3. That lull has turned Starfield from a major title, one that has topped the Steam wishlist charts for months, into the most important game for Xbox in 16 years. And yes, you can definitely feel that Xbox is really in need of a big hit, and Starfield practically can't release, being nothing short than a game of a lifetime. There's definitely pressure right there. As a result, the nerves are palpable. Production director Andrew Scharf uses his preschool kid's portmanteau, scare-sided, to describe his mix of emotions. But there is pride more so. 8 hours playing Starfield shows why. The game is the team's most polished, ambitious in scope and original in tone in recent memory. Lead animator Rick Vicens tells me that he's ready to go. Would you release it today? And Rick says, effin' yeah. And of course I find this really interesting in terms of polishing for the game. It really seems to show that Xbox gave Bethesda the freedom to push the release for 1 whole year in order to being able to polish it to the state it is in right now. Sounds pretty good to me. In the next excerpt we're gonna take a look on what Todd Howard has to say, how Starfield was formed as an idea and how it came to mind. So let's take a look at this one. Codenamed Genesis, jointly inspired by the Bible and Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, Starfield formally came to life a decade ago. Howard loved the name so much that he trademarked it before anyone else could. It was 2013, 2 years before finishing development on Fallout 4, and he had to answer the big question mark of what the studio would commit centuries of manpower to make next. Howard says, "We realized if we didn't make Starfield the next thing," he says, "we'd probably never do it." And that probably says something about the scope of Starfield. This project is so big that they felt the need to start with pre-production now, 12 years ago, because otherwise they would never be doing it. And I'm really happy that they did start. Ultimately, the production of the game has taken 8 years. Very few studios other than Rockstar, whose Red Dead Redemption 2 was in development for an identical period, get so much time to figure things out. I thought we would find the answers faster, Howard admits, explaining that Starfield only clicked into feeling fun to play as late as last year. So I think that tells you something about the production of Starfield, and I found this one really interesting. And one thing that really stands out for me in Starfield is the look and feel, or like Todd Howard likes to say, the tone of the game. Because even though the game is set in a more or less distant future, 300 years from now, it feels like everything you see is something from our timeline. All the things you see in Starfield are relatable. It's not too futuristic. And that is because of the great art direction in the game. Starfield is science fiction at its most romantic. The warmth of Golden Age 1960s space aspirations in its heart, and the familiar feel of a BGS game in its veins. Art director Istvan Pili coined the term NASA punk for its visual language. All clunk and clutter. There aren't holograms everywhere, it's got buttons. They're tactile. You want to press them, he says, squishing the air with his thumb. And I think that really shows, and that makes the game so tangible. And I hope you like the short snippets of the article as much as I loved reading the whole thing. If you want to read it for yourself, go ahead and check out the links to my sources in the video description down below. I always put them in there for you guys to look up the news yourself. But one thing that really stands out or makes a game really great is the sound, and that's why I picked this part of the article, because I found it really interesting. As the Frontier blasts off into orbit for the first time, its afterburners pop like an intergalactic jaguar. Audio director Mark Lampard steered well clear of the glowing purple sparkles of cleaner sci-fi to give the game's sound the same physical heft as its sights. Take, for example, a laser weapon. What does it really do, he asks. It produces a white hot beam that's going to superheat the air. It's going to be a clap of thunder that hits you in the chest. The trick, he says, is to make that feel good. Then you can sprinkle some sci-fi on top. And I really can't wait to also hear the game, because for me that is a big part that can make or break the immersion. Now there's another interesting part in the article where the interviewer talks about quests and gameplay. He says, within 45 minutes I have 12 new quests leading me off-world. One has me smuggling contraband from the mining colony of Cydonia on Mars to gain the trust of the deadly Crimson Fleet. Smuggling is an entire subsection of the game, and Howard and Pagliarulo are particularly excited about the Donnie Brasco vibe of that questline. Another sends me to hunt space pirates in low gravity on the frozen plateaus of Europa. As I boost to huge heights using my rocket backpack, the combat has the responsive freneticism of something like Destiny rather than Fallout. And that last sentence really gets me excited, because I definitely prefer the gameplay and gunplay of Destiny over that in the Fallout series. So that right there really gets me hyped up for combat. But even though the team is really happy with what they created and they're really proud of Starfield, there's still skepticism if the fans will like every bit and every part of the game. As this part of the interview says, because of the nature of spreading a universe across dozens of planets, exploration is both broader and more transient than the open worlds of previous BGS games. Howard admits he's not sure whether everyone will like the change in rhythm. It's not the same as dropping you in a world like Skyrim, he says. You wander totally differently. But it's in those moments of wandering where the game can be the most empty and also the most beautiful. All of the tech and art comes to fruition when I land on a distant world and step out of my ship. I think that moment works almost every time, Howard says, as a distant gas giant rises above the horizon. And for me, the wonders of space and the unknown has enough draw to make me want to explore the world, or rather the galaxy. But it might not be for everyone. But everybody seems to having their own way of coping with the waiting time for Starfield. As this article on Reddit says, I'm so hyped that I can't play anything else for 30 minutes without getting distracted and see if there's anything new about this game. Green Wrangler says, I was trying to play Everspace on the Xbox to keep the sci-fi feel, but I started to notice that unconsciously, every 20 to 30 minutes, I would stop the game and go see if there was anything new about Starfield. I can't remember the last game that made me look like this. Anyone else in the same situation? And many users did agree, but honestly, I can only recommend playing Everspace 2. It's on the Xbox and PC Game Pass, so if you already got that for example Starfield, go ahead and play Everspace 2. It really gets you in the mood for sci-fi games. I really enjoyed my time in Everspace 2, so I can highly recommend checking it out. And I'm also really curious, what are you doing to pass time until the launch of Starfield? Let me know in the comments down below. A few days ago there was a pretty lengthy leak of Starfield gameplay, which we were already talking about in a previous video. A guy had leaked 40 minutes of the game. It was a rather poor recording on a mobile phone while the dude was playing with one hand on the controller and the other hand holding the phone, so you can imagine how the gameplay actually was. He then also went ahead and uploaded a short review or first impressions while talking into the camera, and he promised to upload even more footage and also selling some copies of Starfield online. And all that has led to this right here. The individual who leaked the 45-minute Starfield gameplay and attempted to distribute copies has had their console banned and account suspended. And shortly after, the individual also has been arrested. It seems like he wasn't arrested for leaking Starfield, but for stealing the game's copies and also for the possession of a controlled substance. And here's a screenshot of all the stolen goods and for how much he was selling them online. Yeah, well, I don't know what you say about that. Never seen a dude stealing a game, uploading footage early, then giving a review while smoking a joint, bragging about how cool the game is. I think that's a perfect example of don't do this at home, kids. For a few weeks now, speculation is running wild that AMD will release the newest version of their frame generation technology, Fidelity FX Super Resolution, alongside with Starfield. So everybody thinks FSR 3 will release with Starfield. Now, they had a presentation on Gamescom yesterday where they showed off FSR 3 and there was no mention whatsoever of Starfield or Bethesda. They did show off some developers and some games where FSR 3 is used in development or will be implemented via a patch in the next few weeks. But like I said, they didn't mention Starfield at all and I couldn't find any information, so I wouldn't bet on it that FSR 3 is coming to Starfield in the next few weeks or even months. Who knows, if ever. And now, of course, the question stands in the room if DLSS will ever find its way into Starfield, and many are speculating that the contract that Starfield or Bethesda has with AMD and their hardware is blocking them from implementing DLSS. But according to an interview from The Verge with AMD gaming chief Frank Azer, this is not the case. He seemingly wants to say that AMD did not actually make Starfield, quite possibly the year's biggest PC game, exclusively support AMD's FSR upscaling technology at the expense of competitors like Nvidia DLSS. But he clearly can't. Azer says he can't say what the contract includes, of course. Instead, he repeatedly lands on this: if they want to do DLSS, they have AMD's full support. He says there's nothing blocking Bethesda from adding it to the game. But Azer then goes ahead and says there is another reason why Bethesda might have wanted to prioritize FSR too. Bethesda's decision to use FSR is console leverage. He explains, Starfield is also likely this year's biggest Xbox game, and FSR runs on the AMD chips inside the Xbox Series X and S, as well as competing graphics. Meanwhile, each version of Nvidia DLSS is exclusive to specific recent generations of Nvidia GPU, and I think that's much more likely to be the case, because of course we know FSR is running on almost every graphics card, and every graphics card can use FSR, or almost every graphics card. So if you are using an Nvidia card, you can still use the frame generation technology by AMD, but vice versa it wouldn't work. AMD's FSR is much more compatible, in contrary to Nvidia's DLSS, which in the newest version only runs on the most recent hardware, which is pretty expensive, and that for not many users or gamers would really profit from it. So generally speaking, it's probably a good idea to implement AMD's FSR first, and then maybe later on also support Nvidia's DLSS. And now it's everyone's favorite time of the video. We'll be taking a look on your top comments on my latest video, which is this one right here. These features will be in the game. Devs confirm new information and news for Starfield, and as always, you guys showed it a lot of love. Thank you for that. And now let's look at one of the top comments right here. He's referring to the interview with Phil Spencer, where he said that Starfield is more Oblivion than Skyrim, and I'm Jatan had this to say about it. If he's talking about quality of quests and side quests, storylines and factions, then it being more Oblivion than Skyrim is definitely a good thing, and many of you seem to approve of that. So let's check out the next comment right here from Novaneo. He says, I can't wait to see the first modded Tamriel planet, or imagine if Skyblivion makes a planet with all the lands they are building. And yeah, that would be really awesome. If you haven't heard, modders are able to make their own planets. And we've got another one right here from the One Pistol, and he says, I'm gonna give a fan theory on what this unique twist to New Game Plus is. What if at the end of the game you find a portal of some sort in relation to the artifacts and you have the option to enter it or not? If you do, you get warped through reality and sent back in time to the beginning of the game. The twist would be that the player character remembers everything from the first playthrough, which would open up all new interesting dialogue for the second playthrough. Suddenly, that enormous dialogue count this game has makes more sense. This theory would also pair nicely with Pete's comment on how the game really kicks off after the main quest, and Bethesda has used time travel in their games before, so this idea wouldn't be a stretch. And yeah, that sparked a lot of conversation, a lot of additional comments, but it's a very valid point and theory, so thank you for that. But that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If so, please leave a thumbs up and support the channel. And I wish you all an awesome day, and I'll catch you in the next one.